like to talk about one of the most well-known authors in science fiction of all time, but she may not be known to you if you don't read in that genre. And I first heard about her in 2012, 6 years after she had actually passed away. And the name is Octavia E. Butler. So a quick Google search or YouTube search will lead you to realize just how prolific Octavia E. Butler is. Now, I remember in college, I was dating a girl and she told me that her favorite author was Octavia E. Butler. And she told me about she writes science fiction and how good her books were. And at the time, I couldn't see myself reading science fiction or thinking, what do people like us have to do with science fiction? But I remember growing up, my dad was always big into science fiction and watching the Sci-Fi Channel and things of that nature. And so later on, I stored that in my memory bank. And then as I got older, I used to watch more movies and films that dealt with, science fiction related materials. And science fiction is a genre that most people associate with, you know, robots, aliens, mad scientists, and things of that nature. But science fiction is actually deeper than that in a way, because it's a way to explain the different problems that goes on in society in a future tense or sometimes a past tense, to try to explain what could happen if we're not careful. Now, Octavia E. Butler, her books have been seen as somewhat prophecy, because a lot of the things that she wrote about in her novels either came true, or later on when we look back at her books, you think, how was she thinking that 30 years before it occurred? For example, in the book that I want to talk about on today's segment is a book titled Clay's Ark. And the book was written in 1984 and it takes place in the year 2021. So what ends up happening in the story, spoiler alert if you're watching this far in the story. So we have a father named Blake Maslin, his daughter Kiara, who has leukemia, twin daughters actually, Kiara who has leukemia, and Rainy. So the story takes place in the desert highways near Needles, California. And so they are traveling, and in this futuristic world that was written in 1984 but based in the future of 2021, the world has really evolved into a dystopian society where you have these rich and wealthy upper class people who live in these gated communities, and then the rest of the world live in what's called sewers, or they call them what is the word that they use? They call them sewers, and basically not ghettos, but I don't know, I forgot the word that they use in the book, but they have these sewers, and they call the people that live there rats. And so the people that live there, their society has basically broken down, and the police only protect the rich and the wealthy, and they live a pretty much normal life, but the rest of the people struggle to find food or make ends meet, and they're basically survive preying on one another. So in the book in 2021, there's this pathogen that's basically going to be spread, but the pathogen is really an alien invasion. So Clay's Ark is the name of a spaceship that later on we find out that the wealthy has created, and the the people are on another planet, and they come from the planet Proxima Centauri 2. They end up getting infected with this disease. They come to planet Earth, and the people that was first infected, most of them die, and only two of them survive. They make it to planet Earth, Eli and Mida. So Eli and Mida are the survivors on Clay's Ark. And so when they land on planet Earth, The disease forces them to change rapidly. It gives them superhuman strength. It makes them want to eat weird things that they didn't normally crave, such as animals. And one of the things the disease does is it forces them to have this insane urge to spread the pathogen, which comes out as the feeling of wanting to have intercourse. And the feeling is so strong that they lose a part of their humanity. They no longer care who they have it with, long as they're having it, and they fight to try to keep part of their humanity, which is where the main antagonist in the story will end up begin preying on travelers on the highway to kidnap them, so that basically later they can spread this pathogen to them. And they would, once they spread this pathogen, they're forced to stay on the mountaintop so that other people don't get this disease, and they are able to quarantine and still have somewhat of a normal life. They were pretty self-sufficient on the mountaintop. They had chickens, cows, animals that they could eat and feed off of. But when they got the urge to procreate, they would be willing to do it with anyone. So in order to keep part of their humanity, they wanted to save new people so they wouldn't end up feeding on their children. And so the children that's born out of this dejected reality are four-legged, four, they walk on all fours, and they are human-like, but not quite human. And so the story sets in Needles, California, where the father, Blake, the daughter, Kiara, and Rainey are going to be ambushed. They're going to be kidnapped, and they're going to be taken back to this ranch where these people are still living like it's the 19th century. So that tells us that they had been there for a very long time, right? And so we don't know what year exactly Clay's ark landed, but apparently the aliens had been on planet Earth for over about 100 years at this time period. So Eli is the main antagonist. He's a geologist. He's infected with the virus, and his wife Mida is infected with the virus. And then we meet other people in the story like Lorene and a guy who is, I guess he is part Japanese. He's infected with the virus. And later in the story we meet Jacob, and they say that they have other kids, but we only really meet Jacob. And Jacob is the offspring of Eli and Mida, and he walks on all fours. Lorene is pregnant, and well, she becomes pregnant, and Mida is pregnant. And so they are going to give birth to these future beings that are going to walk on all fours. So Lorene has kids and Mida has kids, and they have kids by Eli. When Eli and them get the urge to procreate, as I said, they can't control themselves, but they really want to spread the disease or the virus, which is the aliens inside of them that force them to do this. They really want to spread it to people who don't have the virus. The people who don't have the virus smell really good to them, and it makes them want to touch them, scratch them. So if you're touched by them, if you're scratched by them, the disease is given to you. So they kidnap this family, the Maslins, and they bring them to the mountaintop. They tell them about the disease, and they are pretty nice to them, but they tell them that basically that they are going to be enslaved, and they are forced to join their subhuman alien infected colony, and that the reason that they can't escape is that now that they've been infected, that if they go back to the cities, then they will infect everyone, and the disease is going to spread to the whole world, and they're trying to contain this disease. Now, what's so interesting about this is that the story takes place in 2021, but it was written in 1984, and it talks about the pathogen that is going to spread throughout all of the United States and the rest of the world. what was going on in the beginning of 2020, 2021? It almost seemed as though Octavia E. Butler was having a prophecy. Not quite an alien invasion, but we had something similar. Do you guys remember when the world? So while this is going on, they're kidnapped. Of course, their human nature takes over, and they each get infected in a different way. Um, Blake gets infected, Kiara gets infected, and Mida get infected. So Kiara is locked in the room with Eli, and they find themselves basically flirting, and eventually, both girls are 16 years old, and they are virgins, and the infection, basically Kiara and Eli touch the touch is so inviting that Eli is trying to control himself, and this makes Kiara wants him even more. And since she has leukemia, she's kind of like, it doesn't matter what happened to me. So they end up having intercourse, and Kiara ends up falling in love with Eli, but he tells her that she is not for him, that she is going to be for the Japanese guy who is in their encampment who doesn't have a partner. So she's kind of mad about that, and then they end up clapping their cheeks, as we say. And then later on in the story, she then attacks him once he falls asleep and tries to escape. She escapes. Rainey, Kiara, and the father Blake had a plan to meet at 2 a.m. to get in the car and leave. They successfully escape, coming down the mountains, and then they're ambushed by these sewer rats, who are these people who basically are outsiders. They are the scavenger people that roam the earth now. And so they are attacked, they are kidnapped, and they are going to be assaulted in many different ways and held for a ransom. So Blake, Kiara, and Rainey find themselves kidnapped again, but this time they all have the virus. And so Eli, Mida, Lorene, the Asian guy, and they then and Jacob, they then follow them trying to capture them because Eli, a geologist, doesn't want the virus to spread to the whole world. And so they try to recapture them, but it's difficult because they're ambushed. The people that ambush them have these weapons, these armored cars, and although they are infected with these alien powers that give them this super speed and agility, they can still die. So they are then attacked and taken to this safe house for the criminals. They are separated, and they are put in a room. Blake is now infected with the disease, and it usually takes about 2 weeks if they just touch you. But if they scratch you and your pores are open, it spreads very rapidly. So these alien beings, which we never see, but they talk about it as if it's a virus, gets inside of the host, and the pathogen spreads, and the organisms force them to want to procreate and touch to spread the virus. And it's so strong that it doesn't care about kinship or relation. So Blake is in this room with his two daughters, and Kiara and him are both infected. And Rainey is infected, but she got infected a little bit later. She ends up having to Blake is severely hurt when they knock him unconscious, and when he wakes up, he is trying to force himself on his own daughter Kiara to have intercourse, and Rainey end up screaming and fighting him to get him off Kiara. And Kiara, she's not fighting; she actually wants it too, because the alien beings are forcing them to lose their humanity. And what the author Octavia Butler is painting is that this disease is going to spread rapidly, and if the people don't know it, then imagine what the outcome is going to be. All of the products of humanity and the safeguards that we put up are going to severely break down. People are going to lose what makes them human, right? Their rational brain. And so in the story, what ends up happening is that Eli, his two women, Lorene and me, and the Asian guy, they end up fighting to try to break them out. On the side quest of this, why this is also going on, because the story is not written in a chronological order. It's written from what happened, and it jumps to different perspectives in the story. So they had another guy named Ziera, who they tried to kidnap and turn him into one of these alien beings also. But when he realized what he was going to become, he offed himself. So now they are desperate to get the Maslins back, because the other guy didn't work. Ziera, he offed himself. And so they are fighting with the bad guys that kidnapped them, the sewer rats. And one of the guys is really hairy, and one of them was a woman, and there are other kidnapped women that's chained to the bed, and they're being assaulted by this biker gang. And so it kind of deals with a little bit about like human trafficking. And so the woman then separates Kiara and Rainey from the dad because she hears them fighting, and then she then has intercourse with Blake. After she have intercourse with Blake, she now has the virus, and it's slowly going to spread into her also. And then two or three of the men end up chaining Kiara to the bed, spread eagle, and they take turns assaulting her, not knowing that she is also spreading the virus. They're getting the virus, and since she has this virus, the virus is rapidly healing her. So it's just get weird. So it's like she's enjoying it, but the rational side of her also knows that they are violating her. And then she sees other women also chained to the bed. She heals rapidly, and the disease is spreading and is getting stronger inside of her. She's able to break free. Her dad is put into this other room by himself. He breaks free and takes off running. He's eventually shot and attacked, and he is fleeing the scene. Eli, Mida, Lorene, and Jacob are having a shootout with the guys in the house, trying to get Kiara and Rainey back. Jacob, the four-legged creature that's Eli's and Mida's son, he then jumps into the house. He follows the scent and he finds Kiara, and he tells Kiara that Rainey is fighting. She's been assaulted also, and they have to leave now. And so they end up leaving. Rainey is in a shootout. Rainey was assaulted also. They're in a shootout, and Kiara leaves Rainey, and she's thinking like, what to do? Is this right? But she thought the virus, everything is just in chaos. So they're having this shootout. She ends up fleeing the scene through the window, and Eli has put explosives all over the house and outside the house, and he would rather blow the house up if he was trying to wait out to let the organisms take over everyone and they could join the encampment. And he's trying to keep the disease. That it's probably best if he just blow up the house. And so Eli then follows the scent of Kiara, Jacob, and Eli. Eli is shot and he's been severely injured and he's leaking blood. So he's trying to find them. Eli on four legs, mind you, and Kiara are trying to find Eli. They find him, and then they realize that he's been run over by a trucker, and he tells them that the trucker is headed to the city. He ran him over and robbed him, and he is dying. And the worst thing that they fear, the disease is headed to the city. So Kiara is in shock. Jacob is like, man, this is crazy. The Asian guy that's also infected with the virus, he's happy to find Kiara. The disease then is headed towards the city. Eventually, it makes it to the city. They then plan to try to find the private hauler, but it's too late. They couldn't find him. And so the book ends with the disease and the organisms, the alien invasion spreading to the whole world, and people are fighting. They are blaming foreigners and minorities, and they are thinking they don't quite know where the disease came from, and the rest of the family, Kiera, Eli, the Asian guy, Lorene, Mida, and their offspring, they pretty much have a self-sufficient society, but they don't know for how long, because the rest of the world, entire cities, first in California, Texas, Seattle, New York, the main places in the United States, then the disease spreads over to Tokyo, China, and then the Far East, and then it ends with the pathogen taking over the whole world, and the alien invasion has successfully spread throughout planet Earth. And it was written in 1984, and the story takes place in 2021. So personally, I would rate the book about, out of a five being the highest, I would rate it a five. It's called Clay's Ark. What got me about the book, and I keep repeating this, is that it was written in 1984, but clearly we can see how even though the author passed away in 2006, how we really did experience not an alien invasion, but a pathogen that took over all of the United States and spread internationally as well. And many suspect that it was in reverse, that it came from overseas and entered the United States during that era. And so many people had to get vaccinated. There was a lot of stuff going on in the early 2020s. And so that's what really shook me. Like, wow, it was almost like a prophecy. Like, she seen something, or she predicted something that the rest of the world couldn't see. But she also deals with classism and racism and different things that she sees in the world. I would like to read Kindred, Parable of the Sower, and her Fletcher novel. I actually need an entire collection of Octavia Butler books at this point. It was very well written. I was really drawn into the story. I finished the book in a day and a half. While I was reading that book, I was also reading another book, but I when I would pick it up, I couldn't put it down. And so it was a great book. It was a great read. I would recommend it to other people. Octavia E. Butler, may you rest in peace, and a very prolific writer. And when I was reading it, one at the, parts of it made me laugh. Parts made me scratch my head. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, yo, how do you think of this? Like, what made you think of this? Especially the part where the people are trying, or they are actually violating and hurting Rainey and Kiera, and at the same time they are being infected with the disease. That they're being infected with the disease and the organism that's going to dehumanize them. That made me sit down. I just was like, whoa, like that's really crazy. Like, this is just insane. But overall, it was a 5 out of 5, guys. I really gotta be honest. So that's my review on the book. If you haven't already, like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it. Peace.